The following production is intended for entertainment purposes only. We are not legal professionals. We do not speak for any government agency, and the opinions expressed here are our own. Relax.
In progress.
I
What
feel
up?
like my microphone would say, "This doesn't normally happen often."
Yeah. I was trying to think of I was trying to think of a word for something that happens frequently but randomly. Does that make like frequently at random times? What would that word be? Sporadic? Because sporadic seems like
sporadic implies that it's not that often.
not that often. But
I feel like
yeah. So
chaotic.
Yeah.
I feel like chaotically could mean that. Obviously, that's not what chaos I think normally means, but I think chaos or chaotic could fit in, like a chaotic distribution of pellets, a chaotic distribution of Tic Tacs.
Funny, that's exactly the framework that I was working in. Is like, how do I explain nothing. I got nothing. Whoa.
Yeah, see? That's what I'm talking about. These are the troubles, folks.
The demons, bro.
Did you say welcome? I felt like you said welcome, did you?
No, I think I said something stupid.
No. Welcome, everyone, to Lawless Podcast with Justin and Clayton. I'm Clayton's my buddy, Justin.
Word. So something that I noticed is basically every video we do, I'm like, dude, it's been too long. Except this one, because we freaking did it just a couple days ago. So
right. I was going to say. So the next one to be uploaded, you also said that.
I swear, I say it every time, and I don't know. I mean, except for the fact that we're occasionally sporadic, or we occasionally have to miss.
Okay. So chaotic, I don't think fits in that. Sporadic might.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say on here like why I was trying to come up with that word,
okay.
but sporadic isn't that's not the word I'm looking for. And the moment's passed, the conversation's passed, but like I'm still trying to find out what that word was that I was looking for, and I can't think of it. I guess the other thing that's passed is that hurricane done? The new one?
There's another one behind it. Milton is the last one that had like 12 to 16 foot surges.
Yeah.
I mean,
what was the first one? The one that we were talking about a couple weeks ago.
The one that was going on while we were recording.
Yeah.
That was Helene. Hurricane Helene. Wait 1 second.
Okay.
I can hear you. I'm just opening up my blinds.
Okay,
so I got to keep my situational awareness on at all time, even when I'm recording. This is never off.
Yeah. Okay, so Helene came and went, and then Milton came and went.
Milton
did
was
it?
A bad boy. Milton was a bad boy. Helene did a lot of damage. Helene. So what happened? It's the course, and I think. So is this the right of the screen when people look at it? Okay. So this is the east coast of the United States, right? You can imagine this is Florida, and imagine this is the Gulf. Helene came up and just like running back, just straight up the gut of the Appalachians. Like it kind of rode the Appalachians and then dipped out. That's why Helene really jacked up North Carolina and the Smokies. And it was right on top of Atlanta. That's the one that was right on top of me. Milton, it looks like, just did a sprint across, like latitudinally across Florida. It came up the Gulf. So again, this is the right of the screen. This is Florida. Milton came up and went boom, right, like through this way. It kind of like rode up the West Coast and then just dog-legged out across to the East Coast. That sucker had like I was saying, 12 to 16 foot surges. That's bigger than a house. I mean, you can't survive that. There's no riding that out.
Were there a lot of fatalities?
I don't know. I know like there are, I don't want to put, there are businesses like on news. It's just a complete devastation. I mean, it's like a hurricane-sized tornado. I always tell people like tornadoes and hurricanes aren't the same thing, because a tornado is like death in that, or really intense in that little
Yeah,
finger.
in that, yeah.
And a hurricane is just being more exposed to hurricanes. I guess the biggest damage from hurricanes comes from the floods that come with it.
Yeah.
Because the winds suck, and this guy Milton had some tornado winds, had like up to 160-mile-an-hour winds.
Dang.
160-mile-an-hour winds. You ain't survived. I mean,
yeah.
Imagine a car, because it's throwing around debris, and that's obviously what does all the damage. Imagine a stop sign moving at 160 miles an hour through your window.
Yeah, that's decapitating somebody.
That's, oh my Lord. So I don't mean to laugh, but obviously laughing just from the shock of the scale, and the imagery. But Milton jacked up Florida, and there's another one coming behind it. There's another one on the way.
Yeah. So have you seen obviously you have, the conspiracies or the talk about like the government creating, like I'd never, I had seen some of I saw a clip of like Joe Biden talking.
Let me very early preface this with, none of this is based on any fact that I'm going to fact check here. This is all from the hip conspiracy theory.
This is just your gut.
I'm about to get in some deep waters when you do. So keep going.
Okay. Well, so I saw a video where Joe Biden was saying that, Donald Trump is saying that we're creating storms or whatever. And I just kind of blew it off. Like, what? I don't even know what he's talking about. And then I've seen a couple videos kind of responding to the conspiracy that these hurricanes are man-made. But I hadn't heard anything about it, and I can't fathom like what the purpose would be or how or why. But
okay,
you're my conspiracy dealer. You seem like the kind of guy that would have some insight. So what am I missing?
Well, let me ask you this question. Did anybody profit? Did already very rich people become potentially much more wealthier after the devastation that happened in Hawaii?
Oh, yes, for sure. And I was going to say, I think that this conversation needs to be connected to Hawaii, because I feel like we've forgotten about that.
Yeah.
Like it's just, it's over. It's done. We're not even thinking about it.
Until 9/11 happened, I was in Oklahoma City when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, right? A lady, Wanda, who worked at my daycare growing up. I was in daycares all the time. A lady that worked at one of my daycares growing up was kind of influential. She was a positive, nice lady. Died in the Oklahoma City bombing. I thought the Oklahoma.
How old were you, by the way?
I was in 3rd grade when the Oklahoma City bombing happened.
It's about 8.
Yep.
Okay.
About my daughter's age right now. And so when I was 5, like the years up to kindergarten, or I guess the years up to 1st grade, the lady who I saw every day at daycare died in the daycare was in the pancake level of the Oklahoma City bombing. I thought that was going to be the defining event of my life. You know what I mean? My mom was, or my grandparents were, my mom had me when she was older, so I'm kind of like a generation behind or ahead. My grandparents were kids during the Great Depression era, like the Dust Bowl, Oklahoma. And I know that was Wichita too, but the Oklahoma Dust Bowl era, that was my grandparents. They had that. And then my grandpa fought in World War II. My mom technically had the Korean War, but she was a little kid during that. Really, the Vietnam War, I think, was the defining event of her lifetime. Well, we had the Oklahoma City bombing, kind of the Gulf War, but the Gulf War wasn't much. Oklahoma City bombing, then 9/11, and then the list just exponentially dog legs
Yeah.
up after that. These things are becoming much more frequent. Like whether it's natural or man-made catastrophic events, it feels like the world is ending.
It feels like things are coming a lot faster.
Yeah. I heard this just a brief caveat into the deep waters of these conspiracies that we're going to get into. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and which was it? I think it wasn't Tucker Carlson. Anyway, but he was talking about this writer that actually explained world events, but from a U.S. perspective, in 50-year patterns. And he explained it and did a pretty good job of laying out that if you follow, like I said, really world history, but through the American lens, starting at 1776, there's 50 years of us creating policy. This is what this was focusing on. So it's not technically encompassing everything we're going to talk about, but the U.S. and really the world, we create solutions to problems. Like we have this existential problem and we're going to create a solution. And the solution causes or fixes that immediate problem, but then it takes 50 years to really get implemented. Like really for all those things to really come about. Think about post World War II. Like we had Social Security came out during that same time. We had all these renovations, national parks, industry boomed after all that. We had 50 years of pretty good prosperity, but during that same 50 years, there was an unknown problem that came in because of our solution. Like because of our solution, it introduced all these new problems.
Okay.
So 50 years after that, we come up with a Band-Aid for that. And there's another 50-year pattern of solving the last problem and creating all these new ones. So it kind of goes in these waves. And the point of this article and even the point of that map is we're at the height of a problem requiring a solution now.
Okay.
But
specifically what? Like what was he?
That's what I was going to say. Well, he was talking about it in terms of U.S. policy. And so that would be the economy, things that it could affect. The economy, our world relations, our border, our national security, I think should be at the top of that list. Things that Congress can affect, within the borders of the United States. Congress can affect the whole world. But the world follows suit in that pattern. There's like 50 years of war, fix that war, and then there's going to be 50 years of causing the next one. It seems like that 50 years has shrunk.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was going to say, even as I was thinking about how, like I'm always like, oh, it's been so long since we've recorded. It's only been a couple days, but even in just a couple days, it feels like there's enough events that it could have been a week, in just a few short days, because everything just comes at you so fast.
Okay. So, Florida. So there's a bunch of theoretical, like hypothetical reasons why people would want like small groups in dark rooms, that control the world would want to cause these hurricanes and these natural disasters. Going at the top of the list, and you can find agendas on both sides of the political spectrum, but I think they're both pretty well aligned. I think, they're the same. They just pretend to be different. But they can this can further the cause of global warming and world change and weather change caused by pollution and caused by all that stuff. Hey, folks, we have to have electric cars. We keep pumping this gas into the atmosphere. That's why all these hurricanes are coming. And we're going to mandate it. We're going to mandate. Biden actually did that, and it failed. But he implemented that these companies have to switch to electric. I think the original timeline was by like was it 2025 or 2030? Something like that, the original one?
I don't remember, but I know that it was at the time I was like, well, that's forever away, but I think it was sooner than I remember.
Yeah, it was. I remember thinking the same thing of you, of like, well, that's a gap where it theoretically could be done, but thinking like, man, I don't know if it's going to happen. Well, come to find out, it's not going to happen. All the major U.S. car companies have said, hey, we're not going to make that deadline, because they've pushed, like Ford has pushed this electric Mustang, and they have an electric F-150. And I think their electric F-150 is pretty sharp looking. Chevy's has an electric Silverado. They have I think a few electric cars, like sedans. I don't know if I know Dodge was going to make an electric Challenger. Did they do that? Because that's why they stopped the Challenger series, because they said they were going to transition into an electric one.
I don't know if they have or not.
Well, that was all because of they're playing along with the rule that Biden came out, said, there has to be electric vehicles. So many people's going to make money on that. And that's like a great exchange of wealth that we're seeing more and more often, where the government says these companies have to play like this. And in order for that to happen, the rest of the industry has to support that. So people are making a lot of money.
Yeah. People who have insight are likely investing in companies that that create the things that are going to be required.
And I want to say, I don't know if I've said it on here, but I've been pretty vocal about this in my normal part. It's not just the Democrats that do this. Dan Crenshaw is a Navy SEAL. He lost his eye in Iraq. He's been on Jocko. He's been on Andy Stump. He's been on all, like Joe Rogan. He really appeals to the bros, to the bro culture. He does the exact same thing as Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, he does the exact same thing. He became a multimillionaire like in his first 4 years of office. And it's not from that 140,000 pay that he gets from being a congressman. It's not from that.
So, okay, so one aspect of it is, or one theory is, that these storms are created to force the issue from a climate perspective. Like, we're going to show you how bad it can get if you don't follow the agenda. Is that kind of the thought process?
Oh, they definitely aren't going to say that, because they're not going to.
Sure.
Ever.
Yeah. No,
what like, they're not true believers in climate change. They're not true believers in this stuff. What they're true believers in is getting rich and benefiting their particular goal, their particular agenda. And if their particular agenda, even if it is ideologically driven, at its base, it's not an ideological cause. So, I mean, we've seen this. The biggest example right now is Kamala. She's this super progressive, super woke. She's always been this way, but we have watched her, and she's being called out on it on these interviews and giving these non-answers about being nothing. She has no stance, because it changes. 4 years ago, she was against, what was it, fracking. I think fracking is bad, but I'm not educated enough to say anything with authority on that. But it doesn't seem like a good idea. 4 years ago, she was against fracking. Now she's saying she's not against fracking. 4 years ago, she wanted to stop any pipelines. Now she's in favor of these pipelines. 4 years ago, she was when Trump was introducing the vaccine, she was critical of the vaccine. Now she says the vaccine's the greatest thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
She's nothing. We see that in these politicians. What was left is now right, and what was right is now left. They're the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I said, they claim these ideological causes of, like, saving the environment, equity, making the world this utopia. But that is a very thinly veiled disguise of what their true agenda is.
I had a thought last night when I was just kind of scrolling through, I think, Instagram, and came across somebody that was
I'm hearing you.
yeah. I came across a post where somebody was just kind of talking trash on the political opposition, and I had the thought, I guess I had the realization that it's no different than a Broncos fan or a Raiders fan or a Chiefs fan or whatever, just talking shit on the other team.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. And initially when I saw this post, I was just kind of irritated. And then I kind of came to that conclusion that this is just a game and they're literally just trash talking the other team. That's all it is.
What they're doing is like it's not easy, or it's not hard to imagine them just laughing as soon as the doors close and just high-fiving each other, because they're getting us to play on one of our most basic instincts, which is tribalism, which actually is connected to survival.
Fear. Yes.
Yeah.
Fear.
Fear.
If you can touch that nerve,
mm-hmm.
dude, you can make somebody do anything.
This is the most important election in your lifetime.
Yeah.
The fate of the world depends on this. This man is literally Hitler.
But even with that, like it resonates because we all have this fear,
dude.
And so to be able to say if, for example, Elon said the other day, if Trump doesn't win, I believe this will be the last election.
Yeah. Now,
and maybe he's right. I mean, maybe there's truth to it.
Sure. Yeah.
Or maybe it's just a fear-driven.
I go back and forth on this. I go back and forth to this in my head. I don't know how important the president actually is. But then sometimes it seems like they can be awfully important, but for the most time it seems like they're not. Yeah. So imagine them playing on this fear. Like they do this in all the ways. They play on this fear. They get us tribal. So tribalism, it's us versus them. It's the Christians versus the idiots, or the Christians versus the heathens, and it's the intellectuals versus the idiots. And so there's the tribalism. Now it's existential tribalism. Like, hey, it's our survival based on this. Now, what if they have the power, which, by the way, we do, and we have for, I think, almost 100 years now. But what if we have the power to change the weather and cause more? Because we know we can cause terrorist attacks. Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, there are plenty of historical terrorist attacks that changed the course of the future.
What do you mean? We can cause terrorism? You mean like we can create a?
Well, the CIA, one of their functions, historically going back to the foundation, is going in and getting with rebels, like and causing political destabilization.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
With the use of violence, we would call that terrorism.
So maybe not necessarily like a terrorist attack, but just like creating an atmosphere where it grows. Maybe
that or arm sharing an attack or multiple attacks. Like we've done that. And so the ones that aren't controversial to talk about is like South America. The CIA was very active in South America post World War II. And it was probably because this is in the tinfoil hat zone, but it was probably because of all the Nazis that escaped into South America and the CIA's founding involvement with Nazi leadership. And they probably wanted to stabilize the area for their Nazi overlords, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But the CIA's done this. Like we've caused world events with the intent of shaping the world's behavior into our favor. Like we armed and trained Iraq to fight Iran. Like Saddam Hussein was our homeboy. Donald Rumsfeld he had a picture of Donald Rumsfeld and Saddam Hussein shaking hands. Same thing with Osama bin Laden. He was part of the Mujahideen. We armed and trained him to fight the Russians. That was us trying to shape the or, in this solution. And at the same time, we're causing the next problem that we're going to make a lot of money to go in and fix 20 years from now.
Yeah.
At this point, it's kind of silly to call it a conspiracy theory because it's laid out. Like, man, this is evidence. And it's to the point to where if you acknowledge, it's like, it's the elephant in the room. If you acknowledge the elephant in the room, you're an idiot conspiracy theorist. Like, hey, does anybody know, or does anybody remember John McCain talking about the importance of training and arming these Syrian rebel fighters that turned into ISIS? Like, we started ISIS. We started the Taliban, which started Al Qaeda. We started Iraq. All of our enemies we made.
But is that from just being dumb and a lack of insight, or are you saying that that's intentional?
Well, Occam's razor would say incompetence. Never attribute an action to malice when it can be easier contributed to incompetence, is a Machiavellian saying. Like, if probably incompetence, but if it was on purpose, people made a lot of money with it being on purpose.
So you've at least got to say it's a possibility that it was intentional.
It's very suspicious. Okay. It's worth a conversation. It's worth an inquiry. Like, why are the JFK assassination papers still classified? That was from 62, 64? Oh, shucks.
I was going to say 63, but
okay.
In that time.
Yeah. Why are those papers still classified? Because we don't want people to know what happened. That's what classification means. It's a secret. We don't want people to know what happened. Why don't you want people to know? What are you hiding? What, isn't the narrative the truth? Because you already gave us one story, Lee Harvey Oswald. What else is there to hide? Why can't we see this investigation?
Yeah.
These are questions that no one, actually lots of people have asked, but there's no answers to. There's no public answers to. And you're a conspiracy theorist if you ask that question. You're a kook.
Yeah.
And so lots of people, and there was lots of evidence of it's possible that what happened in Hawaii was 100% man-made, was 100% and even deliberate. It's possible that it was, and it's a fact that people are making right now millions of dollars by taking that land that the original inhabitants are too poor to rehab, and so they have to leave. And so these multimillionaire companies or billion-dollar companies are going in there and buying up all this land and going to turn it into golf courses and resorts. Yeah, that's happening. We have the ability to change the weather. We have, going back from the Great Depression, so we know how to, it's called seeding the clouds, but it's become a lot more advanced since then. But back in the Great Depression, they would airdrop, I think it was salt or hydrogen, like chlorine, into the air, and the moisture in the air would gravitate toward it, and so it caused this condensation in the air, these clouds to form, and they would keep seeding these clouds until they became so condensed that they started piss and rain. That's one of the ways that we fixed the Dust Bowl, where me and you were born. That's one of the reasons we have grass and save the farms out there, because we changed the weather. In Vietnam, there was
is that controversial, or would people accept that as fact?
Yeah. We talked about that in college.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fact. Yeah, it's one of the ways we
like, because when I hear you say that, I don't know when I saw this clip. I don't know, maybe it was a couple years ago, maybe it was, I don't know. I'm picturing a video from Woodstock talking to a hippie where he's saying that the CIA is seeding the clouds, trying to cancel this event, whatever. And so that's the only framework that I have, is some drugged out hippie thinking that the government's trying to shut down a music festival. And whenever I saw it, I was like, okay, buddy. You know what I mean? But from what you're saying, it sounds a lot more likely than what this guy was saying.
I'll tell you this image or this video that's been playing in my head the whole time I've been talking. I remember I was at Telstar Elementary, and I think it might have been 3rd or 4th grade, but we watched a cartoon video explaining how the government saved us from the Great Depression, and it was like this Mickey Mouse character putting in a can, and it said sodium on the side, but it was like a giant can of beans or something into a cannon, and pushing it down with the rod and going behind it and whistling and pulling the cord and shooting sodium into the clouds and it making rain. I remember seeing that video in school.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not controversial.
Okay.
The Great Depression part. This is I think in the last like 10, 15 years, there's been a lot of Vietnam stuff. In the last 20 years, but there's been a lot of Vietnam stuff declassified just because it's aged into declassification time. That's how we know the Gulf of Tonkin, the event that started the Vietnam War, was a CIA psyop. It never happened. Like there was supposedly a Navy merchant marine vessel that was attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin off of Vietnam, and that's what caused that was the justification for us to go full-fledged into Vietnam. That never happened. That's a declassified, 100% true. Look it up, Gulf of Tonkin incident. That was a CIA psyop. There's another declassified CIA program called Operation Popeye, and what was happening there was this trail that was going through. This trail was connecting North and South Vietnam, but our official ranges, the U.S.'s official involvement ranges was just Vietnam. We weren't going to invade Cambodia. We weren't going to invade Laos because those were two separate countries. We didn't want to have an international war. You know what I mean? We wanted it to be just these two, North and South Korea. Not Korea, Vietnam. I'm sorry. But they had this trail called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Very popular. Everyone, there's cadences about it.
Yeah.
That went through Laos and Cambodia. That was where they were marching the U.S. service members that were captured as POWs. They were marching them through Laos and Cambodia from South Vietnam into North Vietnam. And that was also their supply train of like beans, bullets, and Band-Aids from North into the South. And so what we did was seeded the clouds, and that's when they started to get into more advanced weather manipulation. And that's with like changing temperatures. They can, because of like greenhouse, and because they're advanced in this, they can cause temperatures to rise in this one part. And I don't know how much you or the normal person has ever gone on deep dive YouTube searches on weather manipulation, but if you cause heat to rise in one part, it has to sink in another part. And when it sinks, that's the barometric pressure. So like if you make it hot in Kansas, heat forces the barometric pressure to rise. So east of Kansas, because of the way the wind blows, it's going to get cooler because the barometric pressure is lowering, at least in that moment. It's going to get cooler, and it increases the possibility, especially if those clouds are seeded and very dense, whenever they rise, to rush over here super condensed because of friction. It's all getting more and more collided as it's traveling east. So if it gets, like in this theory, imagine if it gets hot in Kansas, hot and dry in Kansas, all the clouds go away. Well, they're pushed into Missouri. So now Missouri has a greater chance of rain. They were washing out the Ho Chi Minh Trail, their supplies, Operation Popeye, by this weather manipulation, by the changing of temperatures, artificial changing of temperatures, and artificial seed cloud condensation.
Now, how long would that process take?
Months.
Okay. And it could theoretically significantly change the temperature?
It did. It caused a year-long monsoon.
Okay.
Which has never happened. It caused a year-long monsoon, which has never happened. There's always been seasons, and it had a year of one season.
And that's Operation Popeye.
Yes.
Okay. And that's Declassified. You can
look it up.
Okay.
And so that was in the 60s. Think of how everything has advanced from like if you showed a cell phone to someone in the 60s, their head would explode.
Yeah.
And so we've probably come a long way in that. And all of these are super classified. No one's going to talk about them. And the same BlackRock and all, these parent companies that own Raytheon and McDonnell Douglas, which are conducting. That's how the Department of Defense works. It doesn't do the lion's share of its research and development does not happen in the Army. It happens with Raytheon and it happens with McDonnell Douglas.
Yeah.
And so when these same companies that own these classified projects also stand in the way, they also own these construction companies and they also own these manufacturing companies and they also own these super, housing developments and these resorts and these golf, and all the ways to make money. And so if we say, hey, there's some prime real estate of a couple 100 miles, theoretically, in Florida, and there's a bunch of poor rednecks and poor black folks and Haitians that live there.
And we want that.
We want that.
We want that land.
Yeah. Yep. And guess what? If they move, they're going to have to live somewhere and they're too poor to buy a house. So they might as well move into this apartment complex. You don't have enough money to pay your rent? Don't worry. This is going to be Section 8. We're going to have the government do it. Don't worry. We have lobbyists to make this all go smooth. And in the meantime, we're building plants down there. We're building our manufacturing plants and we're building our golf resorts and we're building our theme parks. I don't think that takes very much imagination.
No. I mean, so you lay out the fact that we could control the weather. We could create.
We do control the weather. We historically
we have. And there's a motivation to do it. Mm-hmm. Somebody could get really, really wealthy or wealthier.
And lots of people are going to make money on this.
So then I think the next question is, but would we do that? Well, you and I both know the answer to that. Like that's for a lot of people, that's probably a difficult question because I think for a lot of people, they would say, well, we wouldn't do that to our own people, or we wouldn't do that to, like, they would rely on the goodness maybe, or the nobility of people, that you just wouldn't do that
until you look into history. So, like, has the CIA ever blatantly broken the law and operated within the United States? Yes. Have they ever caused, and I'm going to cite the examples, have they ever, or the instances, some of them, have they ever caused pain to U.S. citizens and to U.S. people for their own gain? Yes, they have.
Well, qualify that, though. What do you mean for their own gain? Like, for whose gain?
Well, so the stated research in one of them, or the stated purpose in one of the things that I'm going to mention, was for research and data collecting. That was in the Tuskegee Experiments in Alabama, specifically in the community of Tuskegee, Alabama, where there's a few different ways this happened, but syphilis was randomly introduced in a community that didn't have syphilis. And at this time, there wasn't a lot of actual scientific knowledge on what syphilis does to a body, especially going further and further untreated. This black community in Alabama, and historically, the black communities have not had a great time in the Deep South, was randomly exposed to syphilis. Syphilis broke up these families, killed almost all the men because the men were being mostly promiscuous, were taking all these fathers out of there, and was breaking up this family. The doctors had treatment to slow down the advancement, or at least to ease the pain, and they were told not to by the CIA for research development. Unclassified CIA operation, Tuskegee Experiments. Google it. CIA Tuskegee Experiments. The CIA illegally operated in Alabama, and either intentionally or unintentionally, syphilis was exposed to this community, but they told the doctors not to stop it or not to slow it down because they wanted the research.
Okay.
Operation Midnight Climax was in the 50s when LSD first, the CIA was experimenting with LSD, and this happened mostly in California, but it happened in pockets all around the US where men would go to brothels, and while they're in the brothels, they would be dosed with LSD, like large amounts, like today would be crazy amounts of LSD, because they didn't know the dosage. They wanted to experiment. The LSD was going to be used as a truth serum. They wanted to see.
But how, explain that process. So this dude goes to a brothel.
Hey, honey, you want a drink?
But the prostitute wouldn't be a CIA agent.
No, she would be getting a pretty handsome, or probably her boss would be getting a wad of money from the CIA agent who's not presenting himself as John CIA. He's presenting himself as, the new guy in town or whatever.
Yeah. Or what if, I mean, I guess maybe it wouldn't be as difficult as I'm thinking, because what if law enforcement just stops enforcing that law, or they let some shipments come through, or at some point in the hierarchy, I can imagine where you've got this actual agent who's posing as a supplier, and just introducing a drug into a community. I can see that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's so I don't know if it's declassified, but there's lots of documentation and investigations on the crack epidemic, like the 80s. Starting in the 80s, the crack introduction epidemic was maybe not sponsored by the CIA, but there were some CIA agents maybe operating outside of the bounds that were involved in that, in the introduction of crack.
That's one that for a long time I just didn't even have time to consider. Like, I just wasn't interested in it. But now I think that I probably am on board with that.
Let me ask you this: Have you or I ever made money, or like via paycheck, or has anyone ever made money because of the war on drugs?
That's why we don't want to win. That's
right.
That's why. Yeah, because it's $1 billion industry.
As evil as it is, the war on drugs is probably why me and you know each other.
Yeah.
Because if there wasn't a drug problem, the Central County Sheriff's Office wouldn't need, even though it's severely undermanned, wouldn't need the staff members that it does have.
100%. And all of these agencies along the way wouldn't be seizing hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars every year.
Yeah.
Like, you can't take that away because, well, like you said, it solved a problem and it created a problem.
Right. That's what we do. And so imagine, I had to carefully set my pot of coffee. I did it old school and brought a pot of coffee in here.
I noticed that.
Yeah, dude. And we're doing it Denny style, IHOP style.
Can I get you a carafe, hon?
Don't worry, I brought my own sugar. Yeah, so imagine, I mean, don't let a good tragedy go to waste. People in leadership have always known that they can take advantage of a tragedy. Now imagine if you have the ability to cause this tragedy, to cause the next tragedy, and you know that your side, your team, the leadership always benefits whenever there's a tragedy. Always. So wouldn't it be smart, or at least, I mean, it would be evil and diabolical, but wouldn't it be, I mean, it wouldn't take a leap of faith to say, can we cause the next one? Or how do we want this next one to look?
Yeah.
Okay, if there's gonna be another 9/11, what would be the least impactful 9/11? Let's steer that. Like, we don't want planes flying in. How about a hurricane? How about a hurricane or a firestorm?
It's the equivalent of this building's going to fall down. Why don't we implode it?
Yeah.
Why don't we do a controlled burn, or why don't we do a controlled demolition, or a
And you know, instead of us paying for this, how about we get these businesses around to chip in, because either we do this or it condemns and, you know, hurts their property. How about you chip in and we all make some money on this and we get rid of this problem? And what do you guys want this next place to be? Okay. How about you donate?
But one of the problems that I've got with this line of thinking is it just seems like it would be so easily exposed. And maybe it is, but everybody is just so confident in the goodness of the government that when somebody does expose it, you're like, well, you're a nut job, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a, you know, crazy person.
That's one of the notable things about our age. Like, I mean, specifically the last 20 years and really ramping up in the last 10 is the veil is thinning. Like, these people are becoming more educated. People are becoming, their eyes are opening to this. So there is more criticism, like more than ever before. There's more legitimate talk. We're talking about UFOs.
Yeah.
The world is talking about UFOs now.
But can we just not overlook the fact that it's like, okay, yeah, they exist, but that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it should be a bigger deal. It should be a bigger deal than it's been.
Well, they say that some of the reasons I've heard that some of the people that are talking, like from the whistleblowers, are saying that the reason they haven't exposed it in the past was because they were afraid of how the U.S. would react, how the populace would react. Well, it seems like we reacted pretty fucking good.
Like, oh, okay, cool.
Aliens, check.
So,
okay.
Yeah, but who's on Dancing with the Stars tonight? That's what I need.
And you know what? You've told us about this for the last 60 years with Star Wars and Star Trek and all these movies that you've been force feeding us. You've made us believe that there's aliens here. So now you're saying that there's aliens here? Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's what you've already been telling me. You're telling me that the world's going to end? Well, that's what your media has been telling me. So now I have this hype and feel of like being Save It Private Ryan. What do I have to do to join this team to affect it?
I don't know that. I mean, it's always in my consciousness to know that the media and entertainment and, you know, all of that has an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I've really made the connection, like, over a length of time, like with aliens, for example, or UFOs or whatever. I'd never really considered that maybe certain studios or certain authors, writers, whatever, entertainers, that they've kind of been given a task. You know what I'm saying? Like a specific task of, let's introduce this idea so that in 60 years, I don't know that it's that thought out. Maybe that's.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, but something to think about, something to always think about. At least this is where my mind always goes to, is the same company, the same pyramid parent company that owns Paramount and owns Sony and owns these people who's been giving us Independence Day and these alien attack movies, Mars Attacks. The same people that own them also own Northrop Grumman, and they also own Raytheon. The people who are doing these secret experiments, the people who own Area 51, the people up here are making money from both of these sides. So if we know, like, hey, we have a fucking spacecraft here, or we have a demonic eggshell that we can't tell these people about, eventually the cat's going to come out of the bag. How can we break it to them? Get them to pay us. Get them to pay us for entertainment. We're going to make a whole culture based off of this. We're going to make all these things billions of dollars. We're going to make so many movies. We're going to make these rock stars. We're going to make these entertainment people. They're all going to be beholden to us. Let's do it for 60 fucking years before we even eventually let the possibility of the cat out of the bag. Like, oh, by the way, they're real. And it's enough. So, like, okay, here's another. I'm following this crazy train. Say it is demonic or whatever that means, but it's not the gray men that Universal Studios has told us it is. It's not the we come in peace, nano. It's not those guys, but let's say it's like Tucker Carlson thinks that it's something that's always been here, that these are like potentially spiritual beings that have always been here. Let's say it is that. Instead of exposing that it is that, which could make people lose their mind, let's spend 60 years telling them these people are from the stars and making them convinced that we don't want them to know what we're doing, which is going to cause even more hype. And so eventually when the cat does come out of the bag, instead of seeing this demonic thing, which should make us freak out, we're seeing what our eyes have already told us it is. It's a spacecraft. And these people are telling us it's a spacecraft. Well, then there's no reason to question it.
Okay.
You see where I'm going? Or you see what I'm saying? Is that if
no,
it's a distraction, it's a mentalist trick.
Okay.
Could be.
Yeah. I guess what I'm not tracking with is what he means by like it's always been here and it's a demonic force. Or something
Tucker
like,
Carlson.
yeah.
I don't know enough of what he said. Like I don't remember enough of his particular words, but in my mind that is connected to like Hollow Earth. Like it's going down the real kooky train of Hollow Earth.
Well, I mean, even just as we're talking about it, like it's crazy to think that like at first, you're saying that we can't tell these people about it because they'll lose their mind. But what if we make a shit ton of money by telling them about it over time?
Yeah.
What if because again, one way or another, we're making money on both sides of this equation.
Yeah. We're creating generational billionaires.
But then I just have to wonder, like, does that mean that somebody had this evil plan that was scripted out, that like it's all intentional? Or is it just like right here, right now? I don't know what's going to happen in 60 years, but today, this is, what I'm saying? Do you think that 60 years ago, they were actually thinking about the big reveal, or were they thinking about just keeping people in the dark back then?
I think they definitely had a plan. I don't know if the plan that came to fruition was what they had in mind back then, but I definitely think their hand has been on it, whoever they are. And when I say they, I think a real good word for it now is the deep state, and like the bureaucracy, the people who make the decisions, the deep state. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I do. But I think that term, well, I don't know if it was created or co-opted by specific, by Trump. But I do think I think it's a legit thing, but I think it's on both, like it covers all of the government. It's not a Democrat thing. It's not a Republican thing. It's a government thing.
So like an example of the deep state is there are generals that have come on the record now saying that they intentionally gave Trump false information about Syria. They intentionally gave Trump false information about Afghanistan. So that's the institutional deep state of the people who actually make the decisions and have the power of them saying, nope, our company says we have these values. So at all costs, even if it's disobeying the Constitution for the greater good, I'm going to do this. That's the brainwashed institutional deep state.
Yeah.
But a more nefarious deep state, and I think more common sense deep state, is the people who make the money. The people who make the money. So like the people, Donald Trump is not going to be, I mean, I'm sure he would be upset, but he's not going to be devastated if all of Mar-a-Lago gets wiped out by a hurricane, because it's all insured. And he's got, even if it wasn't insured, he has the money to rebuild it again. My family down in Florida, my wife's family, does not have Donald Trump money. You know what I mean? They cannot afford to rebuild everything after it gets wiped out. And so they're going to have to sell to the whatever bidder, whatever makes sense to them. If their business gets wiped out and they don't have the money to rebuild, they're going to have to recover something. They're going to have to sell it to BlackRock when they come in there.
Yeah.
Or, whatever company is owned by BlackRock that's going to come in there.
Yeah. So we've gotten a little bit off track, but I think that Well, not really. I mean, I think that we started by talking about, you know, the government, or the conspiracy, the idea that the government is responsible for these
Yeah.
hurricanes.
Yeah.
And so we laid out, like, could that happen? Has it happened? And would it? Like, would the government do this to its own people? And I think the answer is to me, it's very clear that yes. I do not think,
Yeah.
I think that if it comes down to you and I, and you don't even have to go that high in the government, you could probably find somebody on a state level, but certainly on a federal level, that would just look at us as casualties. Like, sucks. Maybe send them some money, maybe send them some flowers or something. But shit, you got to break some. You got to crack a few eggs to make a cake.
We know about this, talking about like conditioning and, like I said, that institutional deep state. Think of like, hey, we want you to get at least, I'm trying to think about how to say this nicely. Theoretically, we want you to get so many incidents a night, whether that's dispatch cases or whether that's self-initiated cases, whether that's traffic stops. You need to be doing something tonight. And so I don't know if that completely tracks, but like we're causing. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I think I might be tracking with you. We're causing our own problems to solve, to
Yeah,
fix.
definitely. And we've been doing that. But yeah, I mean, that's just a microcosm of like what you're saying. Those are the casualties. That's where I was trying to get back to. I lost my weave there a little bit. Those are the casualties. Like, hey, it sucks that I gotta write this grandma a ticket for going 5 over, but I'm under on my quota, and my
Yeah.
boss is down my neck. And
Yeah.
sorry, lady, you didn't have your signal on 100 feet before your turn. I got a ticket to write. Here you go.
Yeah.
That's $250. I'll see you in court if you want to, but I know you won't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, we cause our own casualties, and we're fine with that.
So then what would be the next bridge to cross to believe that this is what's happening?
Well, so that's the problem, is that you're never going to have the evidence. And they say history is written by the victors, but we've seen examples of this. Like, I don't think the history books are ever going to get what happened with COVID right. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be probably classified forever and that no one's ever going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Does that seem really it seems suspiciously similar to what you were talking about with the syphilis, with the Tuskegee experiment?
Yeah.
Seems kind of parallel.
Yeah, except at a grander scale. And that's the thing. That was back in the 50s. You think they've slowed down? You think they've stopped this? Like, they might have gotten their hand slapped, and all that told them is how to not get caught next time.
Which is literally their job, is to be covert.
Yes. Think about when we were cops, man. Case law comes out and says, hey, you have to break contact before you can initiate another conversation. Okay, well, here's introduction to the Trooper 2-step. Hey, we don't like the Trooper 2-step. We want it to be more natural. Okay, well, I'm going to start off with a natural conversation. Hey, we feel like that's entrapment. We want you to turn your front lights off whenever you go from this to that. Okay, we come up with workarounds.
Yeah.
And that's local yokels. You don't think the CIA has come up with workarounds?
Well, I don't think the CIA has to.
Yeah.
I think they're just like
what they've gotten better at is covering their tracks sometimes. But like I said, I think the veil is getting thinner and thinner. Like, there's so much more attention being brought to the Gulf of Tonkin. Like, I know about the Gulf of Tonkin just because I listened to conspiracy theory podcasts, but I don't know if I knew about it 20 years ago. I don't think I knew about it 10 years ago.
I'd never heard of it in my life until today.
Okay. And so the Gulf of Tonkin, like, your dad's generation was directly affected by the Vietnam War, which caused you to be affected by the Vietnam War, which caused your kids to be affected by the Vietnam War. The course of the United States has been affected by the Vietnam War. That was caused by a CIA psyop. I have uncles that died from Agent Orange. I have an uncle, I think he passed away, a great uncle, who had a bullet in his leg from Vietnam. My dad was in a military unit that deployed to Vietnam. I've been affected by Vietnam. It's 100% caused by the United States. And whom, I mean, so there was geopolitical reasons. We wanted to stop the spread of communism. But also, Colt was the largest manufacturer of firearms. They made a penny during that war. Whoever was creating the tanks, they made a penny in that war. Whoever was making the Hueys, they made a penny in that war. John McCain, definitely not intentionally, but was a Navy pilot, the son of an admiral, shot down in Vietnam, became a POW. His whole political career was built off of the Vietnam War. Obviously not intentional.
Right.
But there's been lots of progress had from the Vietnam War.
Yeah. So again, what would be the next
bridge to cross? You can't prove it. That's the thing, is like I was saying with COVID, the history books are never going to get it right. Like, because we have seen the media cover things like what comes on the TV is not what we saw. Is not what we saw, not specifically COVID, but in COVID, but I'm talking about like with everything. Like with
everything.
Yeah, with everything. We know that what comes on your TV is not what actually happened. It's so much bigger than that. And
can I just interject that like we're talking on about, like, if you had a call last night, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go to bed, you wake up, you see the 5 o'clock news. I can't tell you how many times I would say, that's not what are they talking about? That's not what happened. And that's on a local Wichita level.
Yeah.
So to your point, like all the time, it's just bullshit. Like
it's bullshit.
Sometimes it's close to the truth. Sometimes it's a kind of a, well, they manipulated that. And sometimes it's just that didn't happen. I don't know who they talked to.
And so is there a reason that they would do that? Is there a goal? Is there an agenda? Specifically, like it's hard to cover this on all topics that the news talks about, but like we have seen CNN and Fox News and all these companies be 100% gobbled up by political rhetoric. Like these channels absolutely have an agenda. And so it's an ideological agenda. Do they want to shape the narrative? Yes, they absolutely do. Have they? Yes, they absolutely do. Do they make money on it? Yeah, they absolutely do. These same people or the companies that own them are also going to be writing the history books. Do the education system have an agenda? It seems like they do. Does the education system shape the next world leaders? They absolutely do. Does the education system? So like, it's a conditioned thing, and it's in multiple directions. But like I said, I think it's all part of the same overlord that's guiding it all in a hidden dark room, whether intentionally or, you know what I mean? It could be nefarious, but it absolutely is some people.
So let me ask you this, because I've got about 10 minutes before I got a hard exit.
Okay.
What do you do with that? Like, what do you personally do? And what do you, like, for yourself, but also for your kids and those around you?
Like, so I think what Donald Trump proved, so you have to talk about it. The thing is to be informed yourself, like go look this stuff up, make your own opinions and talk about it. Converse. Maybe I'm wrong with some of these things. Maybe you could say, hey, that actually didn't happen. Like that was actually debunked. And here's the safe. I'll learn. Talk about it, have these conversations, progress, and make it public. One of the things that we learned with Donald Trump is the deep state doesn't always get their way. Like the people in these dark rooms don't always win. Like you can see a guiding hand, but they don't always. They're not as powerful, it seems like, because they obviously didn't want Donald Trump. They didn't expect Donald Trump to get elected. Barack Obama said, "There's one thing I am that you'll never be, is the president of the United States." He's absolutely part of the deep state, Barack Obama.
There was something about his political position in Chicago. Do you remember this? When he became president, it was supposed to go to somebody else. I can't. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he sold his seat.
Yeah.
He sold his seat in Congress.
Yes. I don't remember the details, but it was something to that effect.
Yeah, it was supposed to either go to an election or it was supposed to go to someone like in a natural line of, what is that, progression, or anyway, procession. It was supposed to go to someone, and instead it went to another person. It turns out that person made large amounts of donations to his campaign.
Okay, so anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I don't know. What was I talking about?
Well, I was saying, like, what do you do with it?
Oh, so talk about it and educate yourself and talk about it. So Donald Trump proved that the deep state doesn't always get their way. And so as much as I'm not MAGA, and as much as some MAGA people get on my ever-loving nerves, I don't know. Have that conversation with yourself and have that conversation out loud. You know what I mean? With other people. Like, yeah, he does say stupid stuff, and yeah, he's not right on this, and maybe he can't do as much as he says he can do, but is this disturbing the machine, and is the machine good for us? Like, I don't just because these people are in charge of the world doesn't necessarily mean that I don't know. I was gonna, like, it could theoretically be a good thing for them to be in charge of the world, but I don't like them wiping out whole states and wiping out whole communities and, plaguing violence on the African American community in Tuskegee or to the Johns with Operation Midnight Climax. Like I said, everything that I talked about today is declassified and public information, mostly.
Mm.
But
can you imagine? Can you imagine if you think of some terrible crime that you've committed, whatever, 30, 40 years ago, okay, long time ago, and you slowly but surely start seeing it unravel and start seeing like evidence starting to come out and people talking about it. Can you imagine the stress? Like, if you're one of those people, you'd be pretty old by now, but like if you're one of those people that was responsible for hiding or disguising or misleading the public, and now you start seeing, like, I think, like we had talked about with religion, like how we've come such a long way from where we were. Well, it's because we've got information that we didn't have before,
right?
Through technology and through podcasts and through videos and things like that. So now you're somebody that was responsible for lying to the public or whatever, and you start seeing hearing these rumblings and seeing podcasts and all this. Like, it would be terrifying.
That's why they have, like, what's their motivation? What's their motivation for changing the course of future? Well, it's that same 50-year cycle. I think primarily it's money. They're going to become, very powerful, but they can change the narrative of what happened back then. They have that power to change the narrative of what happened during the Vietnam War, through our history books, through the media. They have the power of changing that narrative with JFK. They have that power of just not talking about some things. Like, no one talks about Hawaii anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They have the power to not bring it up.
Honestly, that might be one of the greatest strengths they've got. Because think about this. If the media is not talking about it, it's not on the news. And if I can control your social media, what other people can see, what other people can interact with, all you got to do is really suffocate the fire and it just goes out. Like if nobody's talking about it, then nobody's thinking about it. If nobody's thinking about it, then I'll do it again.
That's why independent media, which I'm proud to say in a very, very small way, we're a part of, and independent media is so important, because this is a very, I like to think of it as libertarian, but it's a very free expression of information. Like, me and you are not paid by anybody to talk about anything that me and you, like, we're spending our own money actually. And, we're just chilling. And there's no strings attached to us that we're aware of. The people on Fox absolutely are obliged to their contributors, to their advertisers. The people at CNN are absolutely obliged to and they're all obliged to the people that are writing their checks.
And to some degree, that's okay. Like your boss, if you've got a job,
understandable. That's human nature.
You got to do what your boss says. And if you don't, you'll get fired.
We need you to get some stops or something. You got to put something on this sheet, homie.
Yeah. Or if you play for the Chiefs, you better make your team win. You're not going to try to help the other team.
Yeah.
Like your job is to push this agenda or this thought.
Yeah. And it's all 100% justifiable because everyone is, especially the soldiers, like especially the people in the news chairs and the people, the doctors and the people at the FDA, they feel righteous about what they're doing. They think that they're doing the right thing. So like, I don't think that they're evil people, or at least not all of them are evil people. They think that what they're doing is right. They don't know because they're in that world. I don't know.
Yeah. Just like when, I don't remember if you said you ever did this, but just like when I was a kid knocking on doors, telling people they were going to hell. Like,
yeah. I never did that, but I did versions of that.
I thought that was the right thing to do. I thought that I was saving the world.
Yeah. 100%. So the bridge to cross is the evolution. It's just whatever the next 50 years is going to be. And we have more than ever, we have the ability to be part of the next 50 years. Like we people in this time find ourselves uniquely able to talk about these issues, uniquely able, like we're exposed to more information than we can fathom with the internet. And we're exposed, like if you want to learn how to do research, like Google, learn like how to research these things and do it from a source, like a university maybe, or whatever, a public education system that has free information, like how to look up these academic papers, how to look up these government files. They're all public information. Okay, learn how to do that. Then go on your merry way. Look up whatever you want to and talk about it. We have the ability to do that. My dad didn't have the ability to do that. Your parents didn't have the ability to do that. They were told by NBC what to think. They were told by CBS what to think, and by the pastor, and by the guy at the coffee stand, whatever, the guy at the coffee pot.
And there just wasn't a whole lot of contradictory or opposing views.
And if you did talk about it, you were a kook. Like especially back then, your entire social identity could implode if you think, hey, going back to the 90s and the 80s, hey, you know what? I think gay people, why should we worry about their marriage? Like, what business is the state having to do with, say, who can be married or not? You would be all of the words back then.
Yeah.
You would, identity would go away.
The same thing is happening even right now with like the left talking about the right. They're weird. Like that's the thing. They're weird. Yeah. It's the same sort of thing where, I don't want to be weird. I don't want people to think that I'm a kook. I don't want people to think that I'm crazy. So I better just stay quiet. I better not ask questions about the weather or the hurricanes or crack cocaine or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. I got to bounce.
All right, homie. This will be good.
All right. Later.
Later.